All right, welcome back, everybody. This is another episode of Coffee with Ken. Hey, listen, in this episode today, I want to talk to everybody about the housing crisis in Canada. And the main question is there really a housing crisis in this country? I'm going to prove it to you right after this. Now listen, I have to get with you guys right now and have just a very, very frank conversation about what's going on with this housing crisis in Canada and what are some of the things that we've found that have literally proven how we could fix this problem once and for all. I think the biggest reason that I'm doing this video with you right now and publishing this content is because recently I tripped on some real valid concerns about what the province of Ontario has to do to fix this housing situation we have right now. And when we did this research internally in our company, we took a look at every province in Canada, what's going right, what's going wrong in the entire housing market. Now, most of what we're finding in our research and data talks about the rental market because there's two different sides to this housing crisis. When we look at everything that we found in our data, we see that one of the problems is, of course, and this is bigger than anything that I think I can solve, but we see what's happening in our economy right now. We see what's happening with the price of houses right now. And in the last year in the province of Ontario, we've seen pretty significant drops in the values of housing. And when you see that happening, yes, it's absolutely true that more people can afford houses because the housing prices are going down. We take a look at why that happened, why these housing prices started to come down. You look at the federal government, you look at the economy. With what's happening now in the Canadian economy, things are changing, obviously. Interest rates are coming back down again. And because of that and everything around that, the real estate market in general slowed significantly in 2025. That's why the housing prices came down. And so when you take a look at the Bank of Canada, everything they're doing, obviously there's got to be some really deep thinking going on there. And the way that they're patterning their drops in the interest rates is spurring growth in the economy and the things that they're doing. And so I'm not going to criticize what's happening at the Bank of Canada. And I'm going to try not to criticize anybody in this video. I just want to give you some real clear information. What I'd like to know is if do you agree with these thoughts or not? If you do, go into the comments. I'm going to watch the comments on this video closer than I've ever watched any comments. And I'd love to get your feedback on the things that I'm talking about right now. If you believe that I have a valid explanation and that makes sense to you, then tell me that. If you think I'm out to lunch and crazy and you are angry about what I'm saying, then tell me that too. Let's get the comments on this going crazy so that we can really figure out what we have to do to make a difference. So most of you guys know that I run a major real estate mastermind group in Canada. It's called the Investors Growth Syndicate. One of the things that's really special about this group is that we have hundreds and hundreds of real estate investors in this group from across Canada. The most amazing thing about the group is we have two types of people that are joining. We have people that are brand new who have dreamed about getting into real estate investing. People that have thought, man, if I could just buy an extra house, if I could get a rental property, I could start changing my life significantly. We wanted to have a place where brand new people to real estate investing, people that wanted to get into it, could join a community where there were hundreds of really accomplished real estate investors in that group, and those new people could learn from the experienced people. And then when we started to join the group, I put together some really unique opportunities that we have available to us if you wanted to join this community, if you wanted to join the Investors Growth Syndicate. I'll tell you a couple of them really quickly. Over the last 10 years, we have developed a major list of thousands of private lenders across Canada. These are people that want to lend money in mortgages. And so if you join the Investors Growth Syndicate and you're looking for some money to do a deal, we have people that are willing to lend the money. And it's probably the only group in Canada that can say that. But there's another side to the coin. We have literally had hundreds of people that have joined the Investors Growth Syndicate community that are incredibly accomplished real estate investors. The last time we checked, we have over 20 real estate investors that have portfolios that are over $100 million in value in those portfolios. So why would those people want to join a community with all kinds of new people joining? It's really simple. Any of the sophisticated real estate investors that are out there, if you're willing to join the community and help me give advice to the new people, I'll help you. See, over the last 8 years, I've developed probably one of the most sophisticated strategies for raising capital online. And for some of those experienced real estate investors, they get stalled in building their real estate businesses because they can't get their fundraising efforts to the next level. So I offer to help those people individually build their portfolios and develop fundraising strategies for their portfolios if in return they give some of their time to helping new people. And that's the secret sauce. That's why this community has exploded so much. But as the creator of this group, I realized with all of these sophisticated real estate investors coming along that I definitely probably wasn't the smartest guy in the room. So I started learning from these people. And we started hosting mastermind groups with some of our most sophisticated real estate investors. And this is where this deep dive originated, where we started looking into the housing crisis. In conversations with some of the most sophisticated real estate investors in Canada, we found what we believe are some valid reasons or things we can do to fix the housing crisis, to drive down rental prices, and to get more real estate investors investing in Ontario. So if we take a look at the market right now, here is our biggest single discovery that we found. We started looking at what's happening across Canada and what are some of the ramifications of decisions that provincial governments are making in different areas. I'll give you a couple really quick examples of that right now. We looked at the province of New Brunswick. And in New Brunswick, over the last 15 years, they have had a significant amount of real estate investors from all over Canada that are building their portfolios there. And these real estate investors are coming into New Brunswick and they're building apartment buildings and they're offering more affordable options to people. But the New Brunswick government, several years ago, they instituted rent controls. And their idea was they saw that all these real estate investors were coming into town building buildings, and they saw that the prices that they were charging for rent in these apartment buildings were going up. And so I'm not going to blame the New Brunswick government for this, but their belief was that if they institute rent controls, then they would be protecting the people that are trying to get rental properties for their families. Now that makes a lot of sense, but what we found was the opposite happened. How did we figure that out? We looked at the province of Alberta. Several of our real estate investors that are in the Investors Growth Syndicate, really when they joined, they were building their portfolios in New Brunswick. When New Brunswick instituted those rent controls, they started looking somewhere else. And you know where they chose? Alberta. So when we look at the province of Alberta and what's actually happening in that province right now, we see a completely different landscape that we see in every other province. What are we seeing out there? So the first thing that you got to understand in Alberta, and I'm just going to give you the points and then we'll dissect it. They don't have rent controls. If somebody goes out there and builds an apartment building, they can charge whatever they want for their apartments. Now, the critics that are going to watch this video right away, you're thinking, oh my God, in that apartment, they're going to charge erroneous rental rates. They're going to charge too much for the market and people are going to get hurt. But that didn't happen. Because the other thing we found in Alberta is the province of Alberta, through their municipalities, are lightening all the rules and the systems around building apartment buildings. They're doing it faster. All of the municipalities are looking for ways to streamline application processes. The processes that people need to take if they find a piece of land that they want to build an apartment building on. In many provinces, you got to go through several processes. You got to buy the land, then you've got to rezone the land, then you got to do a site plan to build your apartment building, then you have to get a permit to do that. So you're talking 3 different processes. The province of Alberta, they saw that and they asked themselves, how can we change the game so we can make it easier for developers to build apartment buildings faster? And they did some amazing things. They streamlined their processes. They took 3 different application processes and turned it into 2. But I think one of the most important things that we've heard in the last year happened in the city of Edmonton. And I'm going to give you an overview of it. I don't know the exact rules, but here's essentially what happened. What you find is a lot of the people that are building apartment buildings, they're literally building the same building in several locations because they have a plan that they put together. They figured out all the numbers on it, and they figured that it would be just easier to stick with the same plan. They're beautiful buildings. Why not build lots of them in lots of locations? That was their mindset. And so when the province of Alberta and the municipality in Edmonton saw this, they came up with what I believe is one of the most brilliant ideas to streamline the approval of apartment buildings. And I'm hoping that municipal officials from right across Canada see this video, and even provincial officials from different governments across Canada see this. Here's what they did. And here's what I think is a valid thing that everybody should do if you want to streamline the processes and make them shorter. They realized that developers were coming with the same building types. I'll give you an example. There's a developer in Edmonton, Alberta that builds 8-plex buildings. So these are buildings that have 8 different apartments in them. And they created a model for this. They got architects to build the architectural plans for it, get the architects to stamp them, and then submit it for approval. And then what happened was it would work so well that they'd go find another property, they'd use the exact same plans, and they'd build another building. Well, some really freaking brilliant people in the municipal planning department in the city of Alberta, or in the city of Edmonton, realized this. And they said, if a developer is coming with architectural plans that are stamped and they're the same plans we have on file, why do we need to go through the process of re-evaluating that plan? It's already approved, it's already been done, and it's stamped by a licensed architect. So what they decided to do, they said that if you're coming to us with the exact same plans and you have architectural stamped drawings, we can do a fast approval. We don't have to review the same thing because it's the exact same plans you're doing already. So what happened in Alberta because of these rules? No rent controls, streamlining the production, the building of buildings. It's really simple. More apartment buildings were built. Now, to all the critics that are watching this, I want you to listen carefully to this. Immediately, you would think, because of the critical mind that you have, that if more buildings are being built and more new apartments are being built, then those owners of those buildings are going to increase the rents. That's not what happened. You know what happened? There's so much inventory in Alberta now. There's so much opportunity, so many apartments available that the owners of the apartment buildings are dropping the rents. Why are they dropping the rents? Because they want to get the places filled. See, that's what most people don't think that real estate investors would do, that developers would do when they get in that situation. But that's what happened. Now, let me give you a direct comparison to that in the province of Ontario. See, in the province of Ontario right now, we have rent controls. You can only increase the rent by so much every year. And we have a very, very tenant-friendly landlord-tenant board in Ontario. So there are rules in place that if somebody is shirking on their responsibilities and they're not paying their rent in Ontario, there are people that will literally stay in those apartments for a year without paying rent. The only thing the landlord can do is apply to the landlord-tenant board to get an adjudication, a hearing, so that they can get in front of an authority and that authority can see the person not paying rent and then can kick them out. But that process is taking a year just to happen. So what we're seeing is a significant amount of people that are freeloading in Ontario that aren't paying their rent. Now, people are saying, well, it's because I can't afford the rent. Right. So let's look at the problem. Let's look at how Alberta fixed the problem. By eliminating rent controls and by streamlining the process so more buildings can be built. They have more buildings being built out there right now. There's more occupancy because there's more buildings. The rents are going down. The people that own those buildings are saying, we got to get people into these buildings. We got to drop our rents. We can still be profitable, but we got to drop our rent so we can fill up our buildings. Look what's happening in Ontario right now. Because we have rent controls, because the processes are so hard to get people to build buildings, everybody who would be normally building apartment buildings in Ontario, they're going to Alberta and stalled the new construction market in Ontario. Now, recently, we saw some pretty major changes, I would say, some pretty major changes made by the Ontario government in a bill they launched called Bill 60 that changed some of the rules, that put more pressure on people living in rental properties to pay their rent and to be good tenants. And the real estate investor community applauded that and said, okay, this is a step in the right direction, but it's too little. And so what frustrated us, I had a big meeting with all of the sophisticated real estate investors in the Investors Growth Syndicate, and we studied this together. And we looked at what was happening in Alberta. And for us, it was really easy to see. All the province of Ontario has to do is eliminate rent controls and streamline the processes so more apartment buildings can be built. And the same thing that's going to happen is going to happen in Ontario that happened in Alberta. The prices are going to come down, because if the province of Ontario and the municipal authorities in each municipality in Ontario can figure out how to streamline their processes, how to do something similar to what's been done in Alberta. If somebody is going to come and build an apartment building and it's the exact same plans as one they've already done, and those plans are already in the system in a municipality, if that developer comes back and says, I want to build this exact same building in this other location, why can't that be streamlined? You already have the plans. You already have architectural stamps on the plans. It's the exact same plan. Why do you have to go through and do a full review of it again? You don't have to. And I'm not just some lay person telling you this. Look at the province of Alberta. Now, if we couple that with no rent controls and changing completely the landlord-tenant board. You see, they have a landlord-tenant board in Alberta as well, but it's not so tenant-friendly. It's literally equal to everybody, following their rules. So if we did the same thing in Ontario, we'd get the same result. So how do we solve the housing crisis in Ontario? How do we fix this problem? How do we get people renting more and get more affordable rents? We have to make a wholesale change. We have to do things completely differently than we've been doing it. And the easiest way to make the decisions on what we should do is study the markets that it's happening in. Study what's happening in Alberta right now. You're going to see it for yourself. That's the secret to fixing the problem. So I put out a video just last week where I demanded this, and I called out the Premier of Ontario and explained this to him. I was pretty heated when I did that video, and I was talking really fast in it, and it caused some anger. There was some negative feedback that we saw from people who watched the video saying that's just going to kill the market. But friends, think about what I'm saying in this video right now. Alberta has proved that it's the right answer to do. I'll give you one more example of this that I've seen in the province of Ontario that proves this point. So we had a condo crash in the province of Ontario, and there are literally thousands of condos that developers built between 2000 and 2004 that are sitting vacant right now. And those condo developers are desperately trying to sell those condos. There's something that most people don't know about how development works. When condo developers build those buildings, they borrow 100% of the money to do it, and they borrow it from the provincial and federal governments, and the provincial and federal governments all say the same thing. We'll give you enough of the money to build the building, but we're not going to release all the money to you until you sell at least 80% of the units. I think it's 80 or 90%, but you get the point, right? So what happened because of this condo crash is we've got dozens of major condo buildings in Ontario that have been completed, and the developers are desperately trying to sell these units, and they can't do it. They've got to sell at least 80% of them so they can close the project, they can turn the building over to the condo board, and they can get the rest of their money. But they're stuck. So you know what they're doing to try and sell the rest of their buildings? They're dropping the prices. We see in the town of Whitby, where I live right now, there are two major condo developments where they're trying to sell the units in the condos, and they haven't been able to do it because of this situation. I'll give you a couple examples. I won't mention any names or anything, but here's the deal. There's a couple buildings that I know of that were finished in 2024. And in those buildings, a lot of units were sold, but about 30% of the people that were sold those units, they bought them in 2021. And I'll give you an example. For a 2-bedroom unit, they paid $850,000 for it. They agreed to pay $850,000 when it was done. 2 years later, when it was finished, they got an appraisal done, and that building that was worth $850,000, it was now, that unit was worth $850,000. It's now only worth $650,000. So those people who agreed to buy those buildings, they couldn't get a mortgage for them because the price had dropped so much, and they had to abandon them. This has happened thousands of times in the province of Ontario. So that proves that if the province of Ontario would eliminate rent controls and streamline the building process so builders can build the buildings faster and give control back to them, prices are automatically going to come down. More buildings are going to be built, and the cost of individual apartment rent is going to come down. Here's the other thing that's happening because of rent controls in Ontario. I've talked to dozens of real estate developers who have built apartment buildings or who have bought apartment buildings, and the apartment buildings they're building need renovations. And so when somebody who owns an apartment building is thinking about renovating that apartment building, they're going to look at how much money they will make at the end. So they're going to put together a plan, and they're going to figure out what they need to do to renovate the building and get a better quality building. And they're going to figure out exactly how much money that's going to take. Then they're going to look at investing that money to increase the quality of the building against the rent they're going to be able to charge at the end. And because of the rent controls in Ontario, they can't increase the amount they're charging for the rent high enough to cover the repairs that they want to do to the building. So you know what they decide to do? They decide not to do anything at all. So now what's happening in Ontario is hundreds of apartment buildings that are in dire need of renovations. The people that own those buildings can't afford to do it because of rent controls, and they're leaving it. So most apartment building owners in Ontario are turning into slum lords. They're turning into slum buildings. They're turning into dilapidated buildings because they can't afford to do it. So if they eliminate rent controls, let them increase the rents, but at the same time, change the process and make this a more favorable environment in Ontario in order to get more people building buildings, that will happen. Hundreds of real estate investors who live in Ontario are now buildings in Alberta, and they desperately would love to start doing it again in Ontario. All we need is the provincial and municipal authorities to change these rules, and it's going to happen. I promise you it's going to happen. I know it's going to happen because I represent hundreds of sophisticated real estate investors who own apartment buildings, who want to get into this game, and they've said it. More buildings are built. That means more inventory apartments out there. That means rents are naturally going to come down because as more inventory exists, more vacancies will exist, and those landlords are going to start dropping the prices to get people to live in their apartment buildings. See, this is a hard thing to get your mind wrapped around because most often whenever we hear of people talking about eliminating rent controls or reforming the LTB board, we're overwhelmed by people that live in apartments that are afraid of this because they don't understand what we've explained in this video today, and they're fighting against it. But friends, if we really want to change the game in Ontario, that's the answer. We just have to follow what they're doing in Alberta. Streamline the process that developers need to follow in order to build buildings. Institute some of these things they're doing in Alberta. It's brilliant. If a developer wants to build the same building several different times in your municipality, if they're using the same architectural plans, you don't need to do a full review on them again. Just tell them they have to use the exact same plans. That will start the process. Eliminate rent controls, let them build more building, and rents are going to come down. If you don't believe me, if you don't agree with these statements, take a close look at the success they're having in Alberta.